The night was cold, with snow falling gently outside. In a secluded mountain church, Bianca knelt before a statue of a saint, her body trembling from the cold and pain. "O Almighty God," she whispered through tears, "there was a time when I blamed and resented you for my suffering, but please, give me one more chance. I was such a fool." A harsh cough racked her body, blood staining her lips. "If I'm given another chance, I'll never make that mistake again." As sharp pain overtook her, Bianca collapsed, her eyes closing gently. "No, this isn't how I want to die," she murmured, her resolve fading as darkness took over. The next morning, Bianca awoke in her room, sunlight streaming through the window as birds chirped loudly outside. "It's so noisy," she thought groggily. "Did I fall asleep after I collapsed? It's so much easier to breathe now." As she sat up, the unfamiliarity of her surroundings startled her. Rushing to the mirror, she gasped. Her skin was clear and unblemished, her hair long and lustrous. Why? Why am I back? She wondered, her body trembling slightly. "No, this isn't what I wanted," she shouted, hurling a flower vase to the floor, shattering it. Bianca de Arno, known as Madame Bianca or Countess Arno, was infamous throughout the kingdom of Sevron as a wicked wife. In stark contrast, her husband, Count Zachary de Arno, was a loyal vassal to King Sevron and a trusted ally to First Prince Gautier. While Zachary risked his life on the battlefield, Bianca indulged in lavish, custom-made dresses and exquisite jewelry crafted by Sevron's finest artisans. On other days, she secluded herself in her chambers, screaming and destroying expensive furniture. "How many days has it been since her ladyship refused meals and turned away the maids?" one maid whispered as they passed Bianca's room. "About 4 days. Shouldn't we check on her?" The other replied, concerned. "That would be a relief. Everyone knows Madame Bianca will face consequences someday," the first maid scoffed. The Arno territory had faced instability with frequent changes in leadership, but Count Zachary's tenure promised stability and prosperity, thanks to his frugality and earnings from numerous battles. However, Bianca's extravagance threatened this progress. Rumors swirled that despite 8 years of marriage, the couple had never consummated their union due to Bianca's mistreatment of Zachary. In her room, Bianca meticulously tatted lace, a skill she learned in her 30s at the Abbey. This isn't a dream, she realized. Abruptly, she threw on a garment over her nightdress and burst from her room, startling the maids. "Did she hear us?" one maid whispered nervously. In his office, Vincent, the head butler, was writing when Bianca barged in. "Vinny, how old am I this year?" she demanded. "It's Vincent, madame. You're 19, he replied, trying to steady his heartbeat. 19, she scoffed. "Where's his lordship?" "At the front lines of war," Vincent answered. "Do you know when he'll return?" Bianca asked. "In the winter, according to his last message." "I see," she murmured. "I need a fur coat, a white fox fur coat," she requested, leaving Vincent tense. Vincent recalled Zachary's instructions before leaving for war. "Get my wife everything she wants. She left her comfortable life in Blanchefort for me. I want to compensate her for that loss." Vincent sighed, thinking, "I'm sure you didn't realize how extravagant Madame Bianca could be, my lord." Later, Vincent presented the fur coat to Bianca. She smiled brightly. "You always get the best. Well done, Vinny," she praised, giving him a thumbs up. "If you're going to praise me, at least use my full name," he muttered. "By the way, a message arrived this morning. His lordship has returned to Arno," Vincent reported. Bianca tensed. "Understood," she said quietly. Despite her notorious reputation, Bianca stood on her balcony, clutching her coat. One day, she would be known as Saint Bianca of Arno, but that was far in the future. Raising her hand to the sky, she declared, "I've come back to life. I've truly returned to Arno. I was given a second chance, and I will live it properly as I promised God. I won't make the same mistake again." Unbeknownst to Bianca, Zachary was observing the castle from a distance with his troops. "How do you feel about returning to Arno after so long, my lord?" one of his knights asked. "My wife is shrieking at the heavens," Zachary replied, noting Bianca's animated expression. "Pardon?" the knight asked, perplexed. "She looks well," Zachary said calmly. As the troops neared Arno Castle, the stronghold of the Arno Countship in the Kingdom of Sevron, 2 guards on the wall spotted the approaching banners. "I see the Black Wolf flag in the distance. His lordship has returned," one of them announced. The castle bells rang, signaling the troops' arrival as they passed through the gates. Lord Zachary de Arno, the Count of Blood and Iron, has returned, the knights declared. Zachary had earned his title due to the way his silver hair, when soaked in blood, gleamed like a well-forged blade, an image that struck fear into his enemies. At the castle entrance, Vincent, the head butler, stood waiting. "Welcome back, my lord. A meal has been prepared in the banquet hall," he said. "Thank you, Vincent. It's been a long journey for all of us. I commend your perseverance. Tonight, we eat and drink to our heart's content," Zachary announced, earning cheers from his knights. As the residents gathered, eager to hear about the expedition, a knight spoke up. "How was the battle this time?" "It was the best. You're going to regret not coming with us." Sauveur, one of Arno's military commanders, grinned, giving a thumbs up. "You missed the chance to see my incredible performance firsthand." Gaspard, another commander, remained silent. "How can you talk endlessly after such a long march? Aren't you tired?" Robert, the third commander, sighed. "Gaspard, tell Sauveur to shut up," he added. "Hey now, Sir Robert, whose life I saved, have you already forgotten how I deflected that arrow for you?" Sauveur teased, his face slightly flushed. "Damn it, who knew I'd be in your debt?" Robert muttered while Gaspard stayed out of the conversation. Sauveur smirked. "I'll be telling that story to your wife, your son, and your grandson. Just you wait, I'll boast about it to all your descendants." A sudden cough behind them made the knights freeze. Turning around, they saw Bianca standing there. "It's been a while, my lady," they greeted her, bowing. "Yes. Where is his lordship?" she asked, her expression unreadable. "He went up to his room. He always takes a bath first before having his meal," Sauveur replied. "I see," Bianca said simply before turning to walk away. The knights exchanged glances, shifting uncomfortably. "She's changed a lot since we last saw her," one murmured. "Wasn't she only as tall as our waists back then?" Sauveur whispered, surprised. "And that white fox fur coat, her taste in luxury seems to have grown along with her height. White foxes aren't easy to trap, so that must have been expensive." "Enough, Sauveur. His lordship allows it, so it's not our place to comment," Robert said. Sauveur scoffed. "Oh, please, you look just as displeased as I am." "But why does Madame Bianca suddenly want to see his lordship?" Gaspard asked. His curiosity was understandable. This was the first time Bianca had personally come to meet Zachary upon his return from battle. As Bianca walked through the hallway, her thoughts drifted. Has it been 15 years? 16? How long since I last saw my husband? She had something important to discuss today, and so she went directly to his chamber without hesitation. Upon reaching his room, she paused, hearing murmurs from inside. Peeking through the slightly open door, she caught a glimpse of Zachary's bare chest as he undressed. Her face grew warm, her heart quickening. Is he speaking to someone? "So, I believe we should begin restructuring the territory immediately," Zachary said. "Prepare a document detailing the executive breakdowns and next year's budget. I'll review them before bed." "Yes, my lord," Vincent replied. Just then, Zachary noticed Bianca by the door. "Bianca?" he called. "The door was open. I wasn't trying to peep or anything," she said hastily, flustered. Zachary picked up his shirt and put it on. "What brings you here? Is it urgent? If you need anything, you can ask Vincent, as always," he said. Bianca frowned. "Am I only allowed to see you when it's urgent? I heard of your return and came to see you. I am your wife, after all." Vincent, still in the room, looked uneasy. "This man is as stiff and distant as ever," Bianca thought. "Is he annoyed that I interrupted him when he's tired? Should I just leave and come back tomorrow? No, I can't make the same mistake again. If I don't take the first step, I might end up right where I was before." "You," she suddenly said, looking at Vincent. "Leave us for a moment." Vincent flinched. "Yes, my lady," he responded, bowing before stepping out and shutting the door. He hesitated, then pressed his ear against the wood. Madame Bianca wants to discuss something with his lordship? What could it be? He wondered. Inside, Bianca turned to Zachary. "I never thought I'd see the day you'd actually want to talk to me," Zachary remarked, leaning against the window. "So? What is it?" Bianca hesitated before stepping closer. "I have a proposal. We've been married for 8 years. I'm 19 now, 20 after this winter. I'd like to fulfill my duty as a wife." "Duty?" Zachary asked, his expression unreadable. Bianca took a deep breath before meeting his gaze. "I'm talking about an heir. I'm ready to bear the child who will be the next Count of Arno," she said. "I want to have your baby." In a time when marriage dictated a noblewoman's entire life, Bianca knew that without an heir, she'd be left vulnerable and miserable. Determined to change her fate, she told her husband, Zachary, that she wanted to have his child. Zachary, surprised by her sudden declaration, questioned if she even understood what it meant to conceive. Though flustered, Bianca insisted she did, recalling memories from her past life where they'd shared intimate moments. However, Zachary's reaction wasn't what she expected. He questioned her ability to go through with it, and sensing her fear, suggested she rest instead. Desperate, Bianca reminded him of the hefty dowry her family paid for their marriage, hinting at his rumored mistress. But Zachary dismissed the rumors and told her they'd discuss having an heir when the time was right. Frustrated and terrified of reliving her past hardships, Bianca was escorted from the room, pleading with Zachary to listen. Alone, Zachary reflected on Bianca's past grief, the loss of her nursemaid, and how she once recoiled from him after battles. But today, she'd touched him without hesitation, leaving him to wonder what had changed. Meanwhile, Bianca, knowing Zachary would die in battle within 7 years, was determined to have his child before that fate could repeat itself. "Madame, I shall escort you to your chamber," Vincent said, pulling Bianca from her thoughts. She turned to him, visibly angry, causing him to flinch under her glare. "There's no need. Don't follow me. I'll walk to my room myself," she snapped before brushing past him, nearly hitting his shoulder. Vincent watched her leave, his face tense. "Madam? Didn't she come wearing that fox fur coat earlier?" he thought, puzzled. That evening, Bianca stood by her window, lost in thought. "I told myself I need to have his baby, even if it means throwing myself at him. But would the Count even care?" She sighed. "He's taller and more intimidating than I remember. Was he always that muscular?" Her face flushed at the memory of his body, though she'd only seen him in the dark. "It won't be easy to seduce him with my scrawny frame. I wasn't voluptuous or soft, just thin and stiff. I'll never have the kind of body men are drawn to," she thought bitterly. Her mind drifted to the rumors. "I wonder what kind of woman the Count's mistress is. Is she a serf or a noble's daughter?" "He must love her," she thought, feeling a pit in her stomach. "He even remembered the exact amount of my dowry. He must be preparing to send me back to Blanchefort once he takes that woman as Countess Arno." She crossed her arms, shivering. "I'll have to bear the child of a man who loves someone else. Just the thought disgusts me." Suddenly, a familiar weight settled on her shoulders. She turned to find Zachary behind her, placing her fox fur coat over her. "You left your new fur coat in my room. It suits you," he said softly, causing her to blush. He adjusted the coat properly before stepping back. "Thank you for today," he added quietly, then left the room. Bianca stood frozen, confused. "Thank you? For what?" She gripped the coat tightly. Was he scolding me for buying something extravagant? She frowned, recalling a similar incident from the past. When Bianca was newly married, her maid Jean had been furious about a squirrel fur coat Zachary had gifted Bianca. "What is this, my lord?" Not even a sable coat would be enough for her. Lady Bianca always had the finest fur in Blanchefort. How could you bring her this? Jean had scolded Zachary openly. Back then, Jean never held back her criticism, even daring to raise her voice in front of Zachary. But despite her protests, Zachary used his battlefield earnings to develop Arno's wealth, ensuring Bianca's needs were met without strain on his estate. Whether it was sarcasm or genuine gratitude, Zachary has never spoken to me like that before, Bianca thought, her heart warming. This is the first time I've gone to see him after returning from war. Maybe that surprised him. A small smile crept onto her face. If I talk to him more often, maybe I can change his mind about having an heir. When the time comes, I'm going to jump you, my lord, she thought, determined. Meanwhile, in his bath, Zachary flinched, sensing something he couldn't quite place. The next day, the castle buzzed with gossip about the unusual events. Is it true? Madame Bianca was looking all over for his lordship? A woman asked in the marketplace. Yes, she even went to his room afterward, a man confirmed. No way, the woman gasped. My wife was cleaning near his room. She saw it herself. Madame Bianca left her coat there, and his lordship brought it out and placed it over her shoulders, the man explained. I wonder what happened in his chambers, some ladies speculated, excited. But the head butler Vincent was outside the door, so probably nothing much, the man added. Still, the unusual behavior had everyone curious. Whatever it is, it must be good, a maid exclaimed. Madame Bianca is an adult now. Even if she's not trying to have a child, I think their relationship will improve. Another maid, Ante, scoffed. You think she's changed? What difference does it make? His lordship still has to deal with that dreary woman. Everyone knows she's a sullen girl who does whatever she wants. Ante, hush! Someone will hear you, another maid warned. So what? It's the truth. I bet her skin is as cold and clammy as her personality, thin and ugly like a reptile. Ante sneered, laughing. Suddenly, the room fell silent. Ante turned and saw Bianca standing behind her, eyes blazing with fury. You'd best bite down hard, girl, Bianca said coldly before slapping Ante across the face. Bianca sat quietly in her parlor, knitting lace. Her thoughts were interrupted when a woman entered. Oh my, you've been sitting here all alone? The woman said with a smile. Zachary told me you're fine with me being here as his second wife. Thanks to you, I can now live in Arno Castle too. Did she just call him Zachary? Bianca thought, stunned. Who is this woman? Is she the Count's mistress? Don't worry, sister-in-law. Zachary and I will manage Arno Castle and its lands for you, the woman continued, leaning against Zachary as he entered the room. So, all you have to do is stay in your room as you've always done. Zachary's expression remained cold. We can discuss the heir sometime down the line. As always, if you need anything, ask Vincent, he said before walking away. Bianca felt lost. But you're the only one who can give me what I truly need, my lord. There's no one else, she cried, sinking to the floor. Suddenly, Bianca woke up from her dream, sitting up and holding her head. That dream felt so real. Maybe his rejection yesterday affected me more than I realized, she thought. The Count showed his feelings, which is rare, but who knows when his mistress will show up at the castle? For now, I'd better make sure I run into his lordship more often so we can discuss having an heir. Or so I can make my move, she thought, getting dressed. It's humiliating to beg him about something so personal, but what else can I do? That's all I have right now, Bianca thought as she left her room. As she stepped outside, she overheard a conversation that made her freeze. After all, his lordship has to accept that dreary woman, doesn't he? Auntie, one of the maids, said loudly. Bianca hid by the door, listening as Auntie continued despite the other maid's attempts to hush her. That's what everyone thinks. Have you all forgotten what kind of person she is? And honestly, I could probably do a better job warming his lordship's bed than a woman like her. Ante laughed. Bianca's expression darkened. I remember being called a dreary and vicious woman, a wife who brought shame upon the household, she thought, clenching her fists. I heard those words endlessly in my previous life, even when I was begging on the streets. I eventually learned to ignore them, but I absolutely cannot let them slide right now. With that, Bianca strode up to Ante and slapped her hard across the face. The maids fell silent, watching in shock as Ante stared at Bianca, her face pale. Did you say I'm stick-thin, ugly, and clammy like a reptile? Bianca said coldly. You knew I was frigid like a frog or a snake, but I bet you didn't know I was actually a viper, did you? Ante trembled as Bianca continued. That must be why you were jabbering away in the hallways I walked through, Bianca added, rolling up her sleeves. She turned to another maid. You there! Bring me a switch! The maid hesitated but returned with a cane. Bianca snatched it from her hand without hesitation. There's a limit to how much you can look down on me, she thought angrily. How dare she compare herself to me? She's just a maid! Put out your hands, Bianca ordered, her voice sharp. Ante hesitated but eventually held out her trembling hands. Without hesitation, Bianca brought the cane down hard. This is for comparing yourself to your master. This is for listening to gossip about your masters. This is for running your mouth, and this is for maligning your master, Bianca shouted, striking Ante with each accusation. A small crowd began to gather, the maids and servants whispering in shock. Someone get head butler Vincent, one of the servants murmured. And this, Bianca said, raising the cane again, is for daring to covet the lord of this house, someone you can never hope to have. Before she could bring the cane down again, a hand caught her wrist. She looked up to see a knight, his expression tense. What are you doing, my lady? He asked gently. Who are you? Bianca snapped. Pardon? The knight replied, confused. My name is Robert, my lady, he said after a moment. Robert? Isn't he one of the 3 commanders in the Count's military force? Bianca thought, recognizing the name but not the face. I am disciplining a maid right now, so let go, she ordered. Flogging her with a switch is too harsh, my lady, Robert said calmly. You are our master, but I can't stand by and watch someone be treated like this. Ante sank to the floor, clutching her hands in pain, her face twisted with bitterness. How did this blow up into such a commotion? All I did was tell the truth, she thought darkly. Bianca glared at her. I know I'm extravagant and cold, but that doesn't give anyone the right to insult me to my face. Just because I'm not a warm wife doesn't mean you can take my place in my husband's bed. What's going on here? A deep voice interrupted, drawing everyone's attention. Bianca turned and saw Zachary standing in the doorway. The Count? What's he doing here? She thought, her heart pounding. Ante, on the other hand, felt relieved, confident the Count would defend her. After all, he was known for his leniency, once sparing a thief and only demanding repayment. Zachary, however, showed no immediate concern for Ante. Instead, he focused on Bianca, noticing her bruised hand. Bianca, is your hand all right? He asked. Bianca, surprised by his attention, dismissed his concern. I'm fine. Tell your physician to treat your precious girl's face. She's your mistress, isn't she? She snapped, pointing at Ante. I flogged her to discipline a servant. I don't think my actions were excessive, but I shall withdraw for today. Bianca stormed off, leaving a tense silence behind. Zachary's gaze hardened as he turned to Ante. If you were just scrubbing the floor, why would my wife think you're my mistress? He asked coldly, cutting through her excuses. Realizing her deception was exposed, Ante's confidence crumbled. Zachary ordered Vincent, the head butler, to handle the matter discreetly. Vincent, upholding the household's dignity, told Ante to pack her things and leave. Your tongue is too loose. This castle isn't the right place for you, he said firmly. Meanwhile, Sir Robert, who had intervened earlier, admitted he hadn't expected Bianca to enforce such discipline. She never showed interest in managing the castle, but today she acted as the lady of the house. It's clear something has changed, he remarked. In her room, Bianca lay in bed, nursing her swollen hand. My hand hurts. But thinking of Ante's swollen hands makes it a bit more bearable, she thought bitterly. I wonder if the Count is comforting her now, promising to replace me with her. Bianca's thoughts were interrupted when a young maid Yvonne entered quietly with an herbal compress. I understand you'd rather not see a physician, madame. May I apply this to your hand? She asked politely. Bianca, taken aback by the gentle offer, agreed. As Yvonne carefully treated her injury, Bianca was reminded of John, her old nursemaid, who had been the only person she ever trusted in Arno. Jean's words echoed in her mind. A person who understands you will appear one day. When they do, reach out to them. Feeling an unexpected warmth from Yvonne's kindness, Bianca asked, What's your name? Yvonne, madam, she replied cheerfully. This seems to help. Could you apply it again tomorrow? Bianca asked, subtly revealing her gratitude. Yvonne, sensing Bianca's guarded but genuine request, beamed with joy. Yes, of course, my lady. As Yvonne prepared to leave, she admired Bianca's lacework, calling it beautiful. Bianca smiled faintly, realizing she had a skill, a weapon she could rely on. Even without the Count's heir or my family's support, I have something of my own. I'll find a way to survive, she thought with newfound determination. 10 years ago in Lahaz, capital of Sevron, Zachary walked through the palace halls when a voice called out to him. A man hurried over, slightly out of breath. You there! 1 moment, young knight! Zachary paused, observing the man. Are you Viscount Hughes's son? The man asked. My brother inherited the Hughes Viscounty 3 years ago. I am currently the Lord of Arno, Zachary responded. The man introduced himself as Gustave de Blanchefort, a loyal vassal of Sevron and first Prince Gautier's right-hand man. Recognizing his status, Zachary quickly bowed, apologizing for not recognizing him sooner. Blanchefort waved off the formality and invited Zachary for tea. It's a floral tea, made from flowers picked from the first princess's garden, he explained cheerfully, but his tone soon turned serious. I've served the King of Sevron all my life. First Prince Gautier will be the next ruler, but there's a faction supporting the second Prince Jacob. It's small, but growing. I need trusted people by Prince Gautier's side. How would you like to serve as his blade? Blanchefort asked. Zachary hesitated. I'm just a baron, newly titled. How could someone of my standing serve his highness? Blanchefort smiled. You're too modest. You're the Black Wolf of Sevron, known for your battlefield prowess since 16. I've chosen carefully, Zachary. Serve Prince Gautier with me, and together we'll secure Sevron's future. Recognizing the weight of the offer, Zachary agreed. I look forward to your guidance, my lord. Blanchefort then proposed something unexpected. I have another proposition. What do you think of marriage? Zachary blinked, confused. Pardon? With you? Blanchefort chuckled. No, I have a daughter. Marrying her would make you family. With that, all my connections and wealth would support you. Zachary considered the proposal. It was a strategic alliance, one that would bring him honor, resources, and security. Coming from a family where he had little left, this marriage was a golden opportunity. The dowry was substantial. 400 calves, 900 pigs, 100 bulls, 300 bolts of silk, 2 chests of jewels, and a portion of territory, enough to fund Arno for 2 years. Even Vincent, Zachary's butler, was shocked. Arno will struggle to match such a dowry in treating her as she deserves. I'll have to do my best, Vincent remarked. Seeing it as a business transaction, Zachary accepted. And so, Bianca became his wife. Present day and years later, Zachary watched Bianca, her hands swollen from disciplining a maid, an unusual act for her, as she rarely involved herself in household affairs. The change didn't go unnoticed by him. That night, Zachary summoned his 3 commanders urgently. They assumed it was a military matter, possibly another invasion by Aragon. Robert burst into the room. Did you summon us, my lord? Zachary adjusted his reading glasses and nodded. This is a more crucial matter than war. The commanders exchanged tense glances. More important than war, they wondered. I want one of you to serve as my wife's guide, Zachary announced, stunning them. Pardon? They echoed in disbelief. Sauveur, baffled, asked, Why does her ladyship need a guard? She rarely leaves her room. Robert speculated. Is it because of what happened today? Sauveur blurted. Oh, you mean when she beat the maid? Does his lordship want to keep it quiet or ensure someone's there to pay off victims? Be quiet, Sauveur, Robert snapped. Zachary turned to the window, his tone serious. Bianca seldom leaves her chambers, yet trouble found her the moment she did. I want someone I trust by her side. My wife deserves that protection. She is the most worthy person in all of Arno. The next morning, Yvonne entered Bianca's room quietly, carrying a bowl of herbal water. She gently opened the curtains, letting in the morning light. Bianca was still asleep, her bruised hand resting stiffly on the bed. Yvonne sighed as she examined it. It's still so swollen. It would heal faster if she let the physician treat it. She dipped a rag into the warm, fast-infused water and carefully pressed it against Bianca's wound. She didn't often compare herself to Bianca, but in that moment, she thought of her younger sister, Lucy. Lucy had married an older man and now lived far away. Seeing Bianca alone in the vast castle reminded Yvonne of her sister's isolation. Suddenly, Bianca stirred, her fingers lightly gripping Yvonne's hand. Is that you, Yvonne? She mumbled. Madam, I'm sorry, did I wake you? Yvonne asked, keeping her voice calm. No, I was planning to wake up around this time anyway. No lazing about, thanks to you, Bianca said with a small smile as she sat up. She ran a hand through her hair before glancing at Yvonne. Could you help me change? Are you going out, madame? Yvonne asked softly. Yes, there's a lot to do today, Bianca replied, a determined glint in her eyes. As they left her room, Bianca shivered slightly. It's still chilly. Forgive me, madame. I forgot your fur coat. I'll fetch it at once. Yvonne said, quickly heading back to the room. Bianca watched her go. She's perceptive, thoughtful. If I had met her earlier, would things have been different? She shook off the thought. No more what-ifs. I barely have enough time as it is. I need to focus on my new life. Later, Bianca stood in Vincent's office, her expression firm. Madame? Vincent asked, surprised by her request, his pen pausing over the paper. Even before I married his lordship, you've managed Arno's affairs wisely, she said, arms crossed. Yes, that's true, Vincent replied cautiously. The lady of the house typically takes on those responsibilities, but I was too young before, she admitted. Vincent nodded. That's correct. I'm 19 now. I'm fully capable of learning how to manage the household. And who better to teach me than you? She said, meeting his gaze. For a moment, Vincent was taken aback. She called me by my name properly. Why does that make me so pleased? He studied her thoughtfully. Something changed after she received the white fox fur coat. She no longer indulges in extravagances like before. Her spending, once excessive, now follows a clear pattern. And yesterday, despite the severity of the maid's punishment, she acted with purpose rather than impulsiveness. Realizing she was serious, Vincent set down his pen. Leave it to me, madame. The best way to learn is to see it firsthand. Let's tour the territory together. Bianca's eyes lit up. Giving birth to the Count's child won't be easy. That much was proven in my past life. So I'll start with what I neglected back then. I'll learn. I'll find the right people. If I can bring progress to Arno, he'll see that I'm not just a child. He'll recognize me as his political partner. She followed Vincent as he led the way. At the castle entrance, Vincent halted. Madam, there's something else. It's about your guard, he said. My guard? Bianca frowned. One of these men will be assigned to you, Vincent explained, gesturing toward 3 knights. You've met Sir Robert. This is Sir Gaspar. He's reserved, and Sir Sauveur comes from a family of free citizens. Well then, madam, who will you choose? Vincent asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. You want me to pick now? She asked, uneasy. One must strike the iron while it's hot, he said cheerfully. Bianca glanced at the knights. They're uncomfortable. It's written all over their faces. How am I supposed to choose? I trust you, Vincent. I don't want to go around with a large entourage causing a fuss, she said carefully. Forgive me, madame, but his lordship insisted, he replied. So this is a command from Zachary. Bianca's stomach tightened. And here I thought we could be equals, but he's just now assigning me a guard, and not just any knight, but one of his closest men. She forced herself to stay composed, but the weight of the situation settled on her. A personal guard? Or a spy? Someone to report my every move to Zachary? If that's the case, can I really call this a partnership? Bianca hesitated, feeling pressured by the decision. Ultimately, Gaspard volunteered, and though Bianca found his quiet nature unsettling, she accepted him. Before she could leave, Zachary suddenly appeared, studying her closely before announcing she had a fever. He dismissed the others and led Bianca inside to speak with her privately. Bianca assumed he wanted her to apologize for punishing the maid from the previous day, whom she suspected was his mistress. However, Zachary surprised her by revealing he had dismissed the maid entirely, denying any relationship with her. As Bianca processed his words, Zachary gently touched her face, insisting he was not the kind of man who would secretly keep a mistress. His unexpected sincerity left Bianca both confused and flustered, her heart pounding as she tried to make sense of the moment. The tension between Bianca and Zachary was palpable. As he touched her face, she noticed a familiar scent. Musk. It triggered memories of her past life, making her momentarily flustered. Snapping back to reality, she composed herself and questioned Zachary again about the supposed mistress. Accepting his denial, she told him she would never bring up the topic again. Zachary sighed at her stubbornness. Bianca then brought up the matter of her personal guard, questioning why he insisted she have one. Zachary explained it was for her safety, given the previous day's incident. He pointed out that a knight would be far more capable of protecting her than a maid. Realizing she couldn't argue against his logic, Bianca reluctantly conceded. As their conversation continued, Zachary subtly reminded her that Arno Castle was not just his, but theirs. The words struck a chord with Bianca. He had never spoken that way in her past life. Later that night, Bianca's fever worsened, and she remained bedridden for several days. Meanwhile, Zachary gathered his knights, Robert, Sauveur, and Gaspard, to adjust their duties now that Gaspard had been assigned as Bianca's guard. During their discussion, Vincent shared how Bianca had recently asked to be taught about managing the household, a surprising shift in her usual behavior. Zachary, curious about her sudden change, asked Vincent to observe and report on her interests. As the conversation unfolded, Zachary revealed his plans to take Bianca to Lajas in the spring. This news shocked the knights, particularly Robert and Sauveur, who hadn't expected Bianca's guard duty to last long. Sauveur, lost in thought, imagined their journey filled with Bianca's complaints and demands. However, the real question lingering in his mind was why Zachary was bringing Bianca along. Speculating, he blurted out a bold question. Was the Count hoping to conceive an heir during their trip? His words left Zachary momentarily speechless.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more manhwa content. See you in the next one.